I think it's an obvious question. It's a good question. Earl Stanley Gardner sold more books than any American in history. Maybe a couple people have caught up since then, but for a long time. And the way he wrote a Perry Mason book is he had 4 secretaries, each of whom looked like Della Street, and he would dictate a Perry Mason novel, and they would write it down as he talked, and then not one word would change. He did that. It took him 3 weeks to do each book. That's not what I do. That's not what most people do. Each one of my books has a different destination.
Let's talk about riff number 1. This is riff number 1. That was an opening quote from Seth Godin. He is on a podcast called Metis Strategy. And what really is compelling to me about that is I have been recording videos and podcasts on YouTube and for Spreaker and really pushing this idea of going back to the old school in a way, which is I've been calling dictation, transcription, summarization. And I'm so unfamiliar with this author that he just mentioned who wrote these Perry Mason novels that I don't even recall his name right now, even after having just listened to it to start this dictation. But that's fine because that's why I'm recording it. But also, it's interesting that a few hours ago was the first time that I heard that. And it is very encouraging to me that my thinking is in alignment with this author who Seth Godin said sold more books than anybody, and that his process was to dictate his books to his transcriptionists, his secretaries, and they would basically publish his books unedited just the way that he spoke it. And this is precisely what I've been suggesting and asserting that people should do who want to be authors, who want to be creators, and also for the purpose of leveling the playing field with artificial intelligence. Because, in fact, the transcription and summarization part, I have been practicing with and partnering with artificial intelligence. What I'm recording with right now is a free voice recorder from Samsung that has a transcription and summarization software built into it. And I'm, again, encouraged and excited that my thoughts and ideas are in alignment with someone who sold a lot of books. But also, more so because I started thinking of it just because of being in constant action and doing things and really wanting to figure out for myself where I stand, what is my best way to create, to get a message out to people who need it, specifically when it comes to healthy aging and longevity for men. Because people in general, but men specifically, have been brainwashed and detrimentally indoctrinated to think that we're supposed to age a certain way. Fortunately, it didn't happen to me, and I continue to assert that I can maintain a level of fitness and mobility and energy and strength and keep on moving because I have really great examples in my life to see how people's health can diverge based on their activities and really the way they're thinking, which is why I broke down aging into 4 types: chronological aging, psychological aging, biological aging, and physiological aging, which I'll touch on in another riff. This is riff number 1. And it's called Let's Talk About Riff Number 1. Mainly inspired once again by Mr. Seth Godin, who says in so many of his interviews that I've been listening to lately as I've been driving around and just working and doing my gig work and deliveries, mainly Instacart, some DoorDash. And he talks about, I'm not really in the business of selling books anymore. I really just want people to have conversations about the ideas, about the strategy in my books. I want people to talk about it. 2 or more people, and have conversations about these things. So let's talk about riff number 1. This riff number 1 is really about the idea of dictation, transcription, and summarization, which is why I was so excited and why I included it in the beginning of this recording of Mr. Seth Godin, because I was delighted to hear that it gave me another example of somebody who was doing this, because I had 4 different figures, public figures, who I wanted to present before to talk about why doing so was such a great thing. So let me actually get to these 4 right now. So number 1 is Gary Vaynerchuk. And Gary Vaynerchuk is a marketer. Let's just say that he's a marketer, he's a public speaker. He runs one of the biggest independent marketing or private marketing firms on the planet. I could be getting that wrong. But one of the things that he did recently in his latest book, which I got to read half of it the other day, is called Day Trading Attention. And the book is exactly what I've been hearing him speak about over and over again. He's true to his word in the book. And what Gary Vaynerchuk talks about, one of the talks that I was listening to, actually, I should say, is either he said it or it was mentioned by someone he was speaking with, about how they really enjoyed that he went off script from his book reading when he did the audiobook version, that is. And, maybe told a little bit of a story or something that was associated with it or related to him, or something reminded him in the book when he was presenting his audiobook. And they really liked that he didn't just stick to on script like a lot of, I'm sure, I haven't listened to a whole lot of them, but I'm sure that a lot of audiobooks, they just basically just read the book from beginning to end, cover to cover, exactly as it is in the book, so people can keep up with it. I understand that. But that was encouraging that he went off script. Then the other thing is Seth Godin himself, his latest book, This Is Strategy. Every interview I've heard, almost everyone talks about how they're fascinated that his book has no pages, and they're just articles. They're essays, or what he calls riffs. And there's 297 of them. And, some of the reasons he cites for that is because, ebooks, you don't have to worry about pages, and audiobooks, you don't worry about the pages, and that it was put together in such a way where it has a framework, but it's more elliptical, I believe he calls it. And so it doesn't really follow a linear format. And then Dan Kennedy, who's also a legendary marketer, he also, I got the idea from him about transcribing his books, speaking them into a recording, someone transcribing them, and then them being edited and turned into books. And also, I recall reading many of his books and listening to many of his talks and seeing how exactly what he says fits the language and the feeling of his books. And so it struck me, yeah, he's basically just speaking his books into existence. And then a controversial figure is L. Ron Hubbard. He was very open about his recordings becoming his books. And if people don't know, he's the founder of the the church, or some say cult of Scientology. And I just want to hear this again. What is this author's name here that Seth Godin mentions here? Because it's just a fascinating thing. So let's see.
I don't think it's an obvious question. It's a good question. Earl Stanley Gardner sold more books than
Earl Stanley Gardner. Okay, so that's the guy who did the Perry Mason book. So that's the fifth figure now I'm bringing into here. Is he now just put the icing on the cake for me, and it is encouraging. I suggest that people don't seek external validation and don't look for other people to uphold what you believe in, or to really go along with a lot of what might be called confirmation bias. However, it is encouraging when things that I'm doing are supported by people who are prominent, who are public figures, who have had success in creating content, as we're all calling it now. And it's just very encouraging that here I am, so excited, and making all these recordings about dictation, transcription, summarization. And, and part of it is to keep a balance, because so many people are creating their content solely and only based on just a few prompts using artificial intelligence. And I'm saying, let it come from you as a human being, and then use the tools of AI to help you disseminate it, right? To transcribe it, because, this Earl Stanley Gardner was having people transcribe it for him. So was Earl Nightingale, probably so was L. Ron Hubbard. And so people were transcribing this work for them. And so that takes time. And then it has to go back to somebody to edit it and so on. Now we have the AI that can do it for us in seconds and minutes. And what I've noticed with the Samsung technology, for example, is that it takes a few minutes to transcribe to make the full transcription, and then just a few seconds, like split second, to get the summary. And we can create text like that. And I've demonstrated on several of my websites now: uniquequilibrium.com, hakeemalexander.com, worldreadingclub.com. I've been using it already. It's also on hakeym.com. So I've been putting into practice already this dictation, transcription, and summarization. And it's a really exciting way to increase work efficiency, and it's just a workflow and a way to get your ideas out there using your voice. And then this was also, just recently I was looking at a video that came out with Gary Vaynerchuk, where he had an interview with someone from the New York Post, and it was just about 12 hours ago, and where he also said something that was relevant to what I'm talking about here, and how so many of these things are lining up. So this dictation, transcription, summarization, so many things that are coming full circle. So what I really want to get to about Gary Vaynerchuk, though, is, and this 15 minutes is coming up here on this recording, is I was looking in his book, Day Trading Attention, and it also upheld something else that I said. So this is the only other second point I really wanted to get to. One was this, what really got me was the author of the Perry Mason novels. But in Gary Vaynerchuk's book, something that I had recognized from experience and from using it and really looking at what is being called the interest graph, which that term was first presented to me by looking at different material and content from Gary Vaynerchuk. But what was mentioned in his book is, not only does the interest graph respond to what we're paying attention to, but it also responds to what we're creating and what we're posting. And I had been saying that, and I had no idea, but as I got through his book, he said exactly that. So it's just really exciting to get confirmation that my thoughts are in alignment with people who are doing great things. So this is riff number 1. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about riff number 1. Dictation, transcription, and summarization. Let's get our ideas out there with AI assistance.